All right, guys. So as Israel continues to hemorrhage support here in the United States, disproportionately from young Americans, they're starting to panic. And so they're going full force when it comes to censorship and also what looks to be sort of outright bribery of US influencers to peddle pro-Israel content on prominent American social media platforms like Instagram and TikTok. So I want to show you guys some of the latest developments on this sort of information battlefront that we're talking about. So here from WikiLeaks, using responsible statecraft reporting, they say that the Israeli government is now paying U.S. content producers up to $7,000 per post, which is just an ungodly amount for what we're actually talking about here. $7,000 per post as a part of a major increase in budget for global influence campaigns. And we got a quote here from wanted fugitive war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu, who was recently here in the United States for the UN. And he also sat down with US content producers to basically explain what he thinks they need to do in order to, I guess, trick Gen Z into being more pro-Israel. So the quote from this that they have up here is, "We have to fight with the weapons that apply to the battlefields in which we engage, and the most important ones are on social media." They also say that a September 2025 filing by Bridges Partners LLC on behalf of Government of Israel through Havas Media Group under the U.S. Foreign Agents Registration Act, or FARA, details, quote, initial payments for production and influencers, concept development with each influencer, and then begin matching with Israeli content partners and writing initial posts, among other line items. They say that more than half of the $900,000 total appears to be allocated to the recruitment and training of a cohort of more than a dozen US-based online influencers who are expected to then post pro-Israel content. So I don't really know exactly what you would call this other than bribery, but it certainly seems like that to me. I mean, willing bribery for sure on the side of the content producers that are willing to shill out for pro-genocide content. But again, we're talking about $7,000 per post that they're apparently going to be given to put out this kind of content. Now, they also say down here in terms of the broader push from Israel that this campaign is a part of a larger influence push by Israeli authorities amid a total collapse of public support in the U.S. and elsewhere as the Gaza genocide draws into its third year. So in late 2024, the Israeli foreign minister negotiated a 20-fold increase in the foreign influence budget, securing $150 million. So among other initiatives, Israel is now paying $1.5 million a month to President Donald Trump's former digital campaign strategist, Brad Parscale, to produce strategic communications using AI tools to generate thousands of variants on pro-Israel messaging. And Parscale is now registered as a foreign agent. And I'll show you more of that here in a second. They're essentially trying to put out and to push a bunch of pro-Israel content online so that the chat GPT models or any AI models that are trying to use data from the internet in order to generate their responses, such that it will basically use those pro-Israel articles or those pro-Israel narratives to respond to people who have questions about Israel or Palestine or Gaza or whatever the case may be. Totally insane, right? But we get down to this. So here's Benjamin Netanyahu meeting with a bunch of U.S. influencers here in the United States about what exactly he thinks needs to happen in the information battle that's currently going on.
We have to fight back. How do we fight back? Our influencers. I think you should also talk to them if you have a chance. To that community, they're very important. And secondly, we're going to have to use the tools of battle. You know, the weapons change over time. You can't fight today with swords. That doesn't work very well. Okay, and you can't fight with cavalry. That doesn't work very well. And you have these new things, you know, like drones, things like that. I won't get into that. But we have to fight with the weapons that apply to the battlefields in which we're engaged. And the most important ones are the social media. And the most important purchase that is going on right now is followers. TikTok. TikTok, number one. And I hope it goes through because it can be consequential. And the other one, what's the other one that's most important? X. Exactly. Very good. And, you know, so we have to talk to Elon. He's not an enemy. He's a friend. We should talk to him.
Okay, so he mentions TikTok there, and he also mentions Twitter, or what's Elon Musk changed the name to X now, which is a terrible name, by the way. But we got updates on both TikTok and on Twitter for this push by the government of Israel, by US influencers here in the United States and in Israel, in order to try to push a more pro-Israel narrative. Now, what I would say about this, just before we get to the Oracle stuff and Larry Ellison and all of that, is that the reason why young Americans, especially through or via social media, have turned against Israel, it's not because there are millions of different, pro-Hamas or pro-Palestine even content creators out there that are like propagandizing people or tricking people into being pro-Palestine or into being anti-Israel. The main reason why young people have turned against Israel is because we are getting essentially a live streamed genocide for the past 2 years directly fed into our social media feeds, right? It's not that we were tricked by some advocate or advocacy group. It's that we can see on a daily basis that you are bombing schools and churches and mosques and hospitals and attacking rescue workers and aid workers and journalists and children, sniping them in the head and the chest on a daily basis. We can see with our own eyes, we can hear things with our own ears, and we can determine that what you're doing is a genocide, that it's not good, and we are not in favor of our government continuing to be complicit in that genocide, right? So it's not, again, like a propaganda war necessarily as he views it. It's more just objective reality has hit an entire generation in the face. So there's no amount of pro-Israel advocacy or lies or propaganda that you can push that's going to change the reality on the ground, that you are in the wrong, right? So I just wanted to lay that out there before we get to what we now have, right? So on TikTok, for example, there was essentially this forced sale or forced control of the algorithm switch off here that happened. Now, if you guys remember, originally, the line about TikTok that our government was trying to go with was that, well, it's owned and controlled by China. And so the Chinese government is going to inject young people with a bunch of, I don't know, pro-communist or pro-CCP propaganda. They're going to turn them against America. And so we got to ban TikTok, right? Or we got to force the sale of TikTok. And that didn't work for them, right? You couldn't get enough of Congress or convince the American people that that even really made enough sense, right, to do anything about it. But what changed when it came to TikTok and what forced the eventual algorithm change is Israel, right? After October 7th, you had US politicians and the Israeli government that rallied around this idea that it was, pro-Palestine propagandists on TikTok that were essentially warping the minds of young people and turning them against Israel, right? If you remember that Nikki Haley quote, I can't remember exactly when the context was. Maybe it was in the Republican primary debate or something where she said this, but she basically said for every 17 minutes, as if this was like a statistically tested fact, she said for every 17 minutes that your kid spends on TikTok, they become 10% more anti-Semitic, right? I'm paraphrasing, but that's the kind of stuff that we were hearing from US politicians, that now it's not that it's Chinese owned and that China is going to warp the minds of young people. It's that it's a haven for anti-Semites, right? Anti-Israel, anti-Semite activists who are posting all of this pro-Palestine content. So we have to censor it. We have to sell it off to pro-Israel groups or pro-Israel people. And that will fix the problem of young Americans turning against Israel. Again, that's not going to work, but here's the result we get. So here from the Associated Press, TikTok's algorithm to be licensed to a joint venture led primarily by Oracle and Silver Lake. So this is the key one here. Oracle, obviously the CEO, is this guy, Larry Ellison. So a little bit of context on this, because again, the forced sale of TikTok or the algorithm shift on TikTok, it was never about China. It was never about anything other than bending the knee to Israel, ensuring that any sort of pro-Palestine advocacy or even showing the objective reality of what Israel is doing in Gaza was shown on the platform, right? So again, a little bit more on this, this new controller of TikTok that we have, Larry Ellison. So charitable donations by Ellison included a $10 million donation to the Friends of Israel Defense Forces in 2014. Then in 2017, Ellison again donated to the Friends of the IDF, and this time for $16.6 million. Larry Ellison, the CEO, the owner of Oracle, is the single largest individual donor to the Israel Defense Forces, the Israel Occupation Forces, more accurately, the single largest individual donor. They also say, according to reports in 2019, Larry Ellison funded illegal annexation projects in Jerusalem that received criticism from Palestinians as well as Israeli peace activists and archaeologists. I mean, when you got the archaeologists criticizing you, I mean, you got to be in the wrong at that point, right? But again, 2019, funding illegal annexation projects in Jerusalem. Final thing, Ellison, who has close ties with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, reportedly lobbied Israeli mogul Arnon Milchan to drop his lawyer so that Netanyahu, implicated in one of his corruption cases, could hire him. It was also revealed in 2021 that Ellison offered Netanyahu a post at Oracle. So again, deeply financially and I guess ideologically tied in with the Israeli government, with Benjamin Netanyahu specifically, and with the IDF. So I wonder what direction he is going to take the TikTok algorithm in. And we already have reports right now of widespread censorship of any sort of content that's critical of Israel going on TikTok right now. I'll show you one example of that here in a minute. But another thing here, again, from Responsible Statecraft. So there were leaked email reveals in communications between the company, Oracle, leading the TikTok purchase, and the former Israeli Prime Minister, Ehud Barak. So this is the former then CEO of Oracle, Safra Katz. She said, quote, "We believe that we have to embed the love and respect for Israel in the American culture." Again, that's your former Oracle CEO, just to get a sense of what this company is. Another dystopian and disturbing quote here from Larry Ellison from last year, I believe. So here pointed out by Michael Schellenberger, he says the man behind the digital ID push is Larry Ellison, the owner of Oracle, now CBS, CNN, and soon to be TikTok. He wants data centralization and total surveillance, saying, quote, "Citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly watching and recording everything that's going on." That's what he says. So this is the kind of tech world, tech online spaces that he envisions, is total centralization and total surveillance, so that people are scared that the government or that these big corporations will see what they're talking about and will then be silenced, right? They'll be on their best behavior because we will know and record everything that you're doing. So there you have Larry Ellison. And again, we already have examples of some forms of censorship. So, I mean, this was one comment, and I've seen plenty other examples of this as well as pro-Palestine content creators that I know and that I follow on TikTok who say that they're essentially some of their posts have been entirely blocked from being uploaded and that they're getting all of these warnings from TikTok. But this is just one example of a comment that was removed for apparently violating TikTok's community guidelines. So here's the comment. It's a laughing face and then a clown face. And they say Democrats and Republicans are both controlled by Israel through AIPAC. Do some research. Guys, this is not even, I mean, number one, clearly not an anti-Semitic post. There's no plausible way to make that case. And then second, it's just objectively true. Like, this is a factual statement that AIPAC is a pro-Israel lobbying organization that effectively works on behalf of the Israeli government or in the interests of the Israeli government, and they dump hundreds of millions of dollars into U.S. elections in order to ensure that nobody who's critical of Israel gets elected to Congress. That's the entire function of AIPAC. And yeah, they do donate to the campaigns of Democrats and Republicans. There's nothing objectionable about this. This is an entirely factual statement here that was posted. And as pointed out here by Glenn Greenwald, he says there were two venues in the U.S. where Israel criticism thrived. Number one, U.S. campuses, and number two, TikTok. The campus problem was solved by the Trump's new hate speech codes, firing professors, DEI for Jewish students, etc. And the TikTok problem was solved by giving it to the IDF financier Larry Ellison. Now, on the second point that he made there, about U.S. campuses, obviously, as he talked about there's been a ton of censorship. I mean, students having their degrees pulled even after they've, graduated and finished their classes for daring to protest or to criticize Israel. The firing of professors, the arrests and the harassment of students by the police as directed by some of these campuses. And now you even have stuff like this. So as you guys know, again, the Trump administration went after and threatened to pull the funding from all of these different universities under the justification or the accusation that they're they're like safe havens for anti-Semites. And so they have to crack down on quote unquote anti-Semitism when, of course, we really know what they mean by that, criticism of Israel. And so here's an example of what some of these universities are doing in order to try to basically appease the Trump administration. So here from Zachary Foster and reporting from The Guardian. Students at Northwestern University are being forced to watch a propaganda video that, number one, equates criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism. Number two, compares critics of Israel to former KKK Grand Wizard David Duke. Number three, states Israel was founded on British land. Israel was founded on British land, right? Obviously, completely untrue. It's Palestinian land, but I guess the stretch of the imagination that they're working with there is the British Mandate of Palestine that was the precursor to the state of Israel. But to say that Israel was founded on British land, I mean, I guess it kind of gives you an insight into the European settler colonial project that is Zionism, because that's just a remarkable way to frame history there. And number four, they say refers to the occupied West Bank as Judea and Samaria, which of course is what the Israelis call the West Bank in order to further justify their ethnic cleansing of Palestinians from the land, the expansion of their illegal settlements into the West Bank, and the eventual total annexation of, again, what they call Judea and Samaria in an attempt to sort of claim some sort of biblical right to this territory that Palestinians are living on, right? So this is a kind of video that they're being forced to watch. And he also says, if you require students to watch a video that equates opposition of genocide with anti-Semitism, you are not an academic institution. You are a pro-genocide institution that should be boycotted, toxic. And he's 100% correct here. And, you know, this is something that's probably being replicated across many universities across the United States, but it's just unhinged. And also, by the way, it's not even going to work. Like, if you know anything about young people, when you start comparing criticisms of a genocide with being anti-Semitic, it's not going to push through, right? It's going to be like any of these other sort of like, you know, public service announcement videos that we were shown when we were young. If anything, people will want to rebel against that because it's so clearly just whitewashing the crimes that we are all witnessing with our own eyes. I mean, it's just totally and completely ridiculous. But this is sort of the brainwashing that they're attempting to push on US campuses as well, which again, if anything, in any context, are supposed to be one of the only safe havens for having controversial views, for having controversial debates and to protest and to have disagreements on these kinds of things. But they say, no, no, no. If you disagree with Israel, if you're criticizing Israel, you're basically the KKK Grand Wizard David Duke, according to Northwestern. Just phenomenal stuff there. Now, again, the update not only on TikTok, but also we have on Twitter, or I guess as it's being called X. I don't know. I still don't like doing that, but here from Echo Chamber, he says, number one, force the sale of TikTok to Larry Ellison. And number two, immediately begin pressure campaign on X. So, I mean, literally almost a couple of days after the Oracle takeover of TikTok was formalized, we now have all of these articles here from Meza.net, Jewish Insider, the Jerusalem Post, Jewish Council for Public Affairs. I've seen the ADL talking about this as well, and CNN. I mean, with headlines like Musk's X is a go-to platform for anti-Semitism. Again, all of these basically saying the same exact thing. Now, to be fair, okay, and I will say this, ever since Elon Musk took over Twitter, there has been a massive increase in genuine anti-Semitism. Now, here's where it gets squirrely, right? Because when the ADL or when many of these, you know, Zionist, pro-Israel organizations and publications, when they say there's anti-Semitism, they're talking about people like me, right? They're talking about people who are pro-Palestine or who are anti-Israel or critical of the genocide or who are just doing reporting on what Israel is doing and calling them out for their various crimes. They're talking about me for the most part when they say anti-Semitism. But there is a marked increase ever since Elon Musk took over the platform of just straight up pro-Nazi, pro-Hitler content on Twitter. I mean, I see it all the time. Every couple of days in my feed, and the For You page, like the suggested page or whatever, I'll see a post that has like 140,000 likes with millions of impressions. That's literally just a translated speech of Adolf Hitler, right? With people saying he was right. So I'm not going to dismiss the idea that there is anti-Semitism on TikTok or on Twitter, because if there was one social media platform that at least I use that I have seen straight up pro-Nazi stuff, it would be Twitter. But again, that's not really the stuff that they're talking about. And that's not really the broader push that's relevant here to this conversation in terms of what Israel wants to crack down on, right? Again, they would be much more likely to go after somebody like me who's reporting on the genocide than they would be to go after genuine white supremacists or genuine neo-Nazis on these kinds of platforms. So they're going after Twitter as well. And as Benjamin Netanyahu said in that first clip that we watched, apparently Elon Musk is a friend. And so they're going to try to convince him that there needs to be a major crackdown on Twitter as well. Now, again, talking about the AI push here, because this is absolutely insane with Brad Parscale, Trump's former ally. So they say here that Clock Tower LLC, right? This is the government of Israel hiring this new conservative-aligned firm, and they're going to create media for Gen Z audiences in a contract worth $6 million. At least 80% of content that Clock Tower produces will be, quote, tailored to Gen Z audiences across platforms, including TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, podcasts, and other relevant digital and broadcast outlets, with a minimum goal of 50 million impressions per month. Now, just on this part before we get to the AI bit, guys, 50 million impressions a month is not a lot for the trade-off here. You're talking about $6 million. You know how many impressions we could get with $6 million? I mean, this is like, if you have one post on Twitter that goes viral and gets 100,000 likes on it, which is not a difficult thing to do, you could get, 10 million impressions just from that alone. Like, this is not even an impressive goal that it seems this wouldn't influence many people. But anyways, we continue. They say Clock Tower will even deploy, quote, websites and content to deliver GPT framing results on GPT conversations. In other words, Clock Tower will create new websites to influence how AI GPT models such as ChatGPT, which are trained on vast amounts of data from every corner of the internet, frame topics and respond to them, all on behalf of Israel. As a part of this work, the firm will also use search engine optimization software, Market Brew AI, a predictive AI platform that helps clients to adapt to algorithms to promote their work on search engines like Google and Bing to, quote, improve the visibility and ranking of relevant narratives. So they're trying to, number one, influence social media platforms across the board on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, etc. Number two, they're trying to go after their visibility in search engines so that pro-Israel outlets or pro-Israel articles and content are the first things that show up when you Google anything about the latest on Israel or Gaza or Palestine or whatever. And then number three, they're trying to inject new websites, essentially, to create new websites so that as ChatGPT or other language models are scouring the internet for information on whatever question that you type in that's relevant to this subject, so that these are factored in to ChatGPT's responses, right? So you inject a bunch of pro-Israel narratives so that, hey, maybe it's a little bit more likely that ChatGPT will give you an overt pro-Israel or pro-Zionist talking point when you ask it about the history of the conflict of Israel-Palestine, right? So these are the lengths that they are trying to go in order to influence younger Americans. I mean, it is a full-scoped, aggressive kind of strategy that they're using here. Now, final thing, which is on why exactly they're doing this. Because again, Americans, disproportionately young people, have absolutely abandoned Israel, right? So here's the latest polling from the New York Times Siena poll among Americans aged 18 to 29. So Gen Z, for the most part, sort of my age bracket. So the question number one here is, should we provide more economic or military support to Israel? 23% support, with 68% opposing. Guys, this is more than a supermajority of young Americans opposing continued both military and economic support for Israel. So essentially, a full cutoff from Israel is what's being suggested here. We also have, who do you sympathize with more? 19% for Israel, 61% for Palestinians. I mean, guys, you could rewind the clock to 4 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe even 3 years ago, and this would be completely flipped. All of these numbers would be completely flipped, even with young people. Maybe not completely flipped, but definitely heavily in Israel's favor. So this is what's happened over the last 2 years. Final question. Should Israel stop or continue their military campaign? Again, 69% say stop. And they also say that 66% say that Israel is intentionally killing civilians, which is just objectively true. So again, this is what happens when you have a live streamed genocide for 2 years straight, where we can directly see what Palestinians are going through their own eyes. They're posting it on social media. Not only are Palestinians getting their messages out to the rest of the world, but even IDF soldiers are posting on social media platforms for all of us to see, bragging about the various war crimes that they are committing on a daily basis. So when you do that, it's not difficult to see why or how young people have turned against you. It's because what you are doing is objectively evil and wrong. And again, there is no amount of propaganda on TikTok or Facebook or Instagram or through AI chat GPT models or through whatever you want to talk about that's going to change that, right? So again, I mean, let's ask for maybe some deeper reflection here from the pro-Israel crowd as to how we got to this situation, okay? I guarantee you, it's not that overnight young Americans woke up and said we should all be anti-Semites. It's not that. It's not even everybody woke up one day and said, hey, fuck Israel, right? Israel just sucks because that's the cool thing. No, it's objective reality that has driven people to this point. So if you want to get a scope of how could we possibly change this going into the future, maybe end the genocide. Maybe stop killing children for everybody to see on a daily basis. Maybe end the apartheid, right? Maybe stop ethnically cleansing Palestinians from their land in the West Bank. Maybe show the smallest drop of morality, of basic decency. And one final thing that I'll say about this as I wrap up this video is that the main reason that Israel is so panicked about this is because they could not act in the belligerent, offensive, aggressive way that they have been without the support and the backing and the diplomatic cover and the weapons from the United States of America. And so if young people hold this position firmly and eventually we gain control in Congress, we gain more influence as time goes on in US politics, then Israel is screwed. They're just fucked, right? They could not act in the belligerent and aggressive way towards every surrounding country that they are right now if it wasn't for the full and total support of the United States. So I guess there's a little bit of some glimmer of hope in all of this. And hopefully young people do stand firm on this, especially right now, as it seems like, even with this sort of fake ceasefire deal that's been proposed by Trump and Netanyahu, that doesn't seem like it's really going to pan out. And you have them now attacking the global flotilla that's trying to make its way to deliver aid to Gaza. Now is as important of a time as ever that we ramp up the pressure on Israel and we don't fall for the lazy propaganda.
Politic guy has the best politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying